Welcome to the Enchanted Ears podcast,
where we discuss anything and everything Disney.
I'm Angela.
And I'm Joe, and on today's episode, we are wrapping up our opening day series of Walt Disney World with Animal Kingdom.
Yes.
So we've done all of the other parks kind of in chronological order. What was it like building the park? What did, the history of kind of building these parks? What was it like being there on opening day? And it's kind of a fun look back to see like what attractions were there, what attractions weren't there. In most cases. But today we're wrapping it up with Animal Kingdom.
Yes.
Got a little waylaid with the holidays and all of kind of like our holiday theme shows, because it's been like a month or so, maybe 2 months now, since we did Hollywood Studios, but we're kind of finally wrapping it up. No Disney news this week because hopefully we survived the Dopey Challenge. You probably are okay. Hopefully I survived the Dopey Challenge.
I don't know if I feel like I'm trained as well as I was a couple years back when I did it.
Yeah, I think you'll be okay though. You've done it, so you at least know what to expect. I have no idea.
I don't think I'm mentally prepared because we're closer now. We know what the weather's going to be like. I don't think I'm mentally prepared for it to be colder and for the marathon to be moved back an extra half an hour to 4:30 a.m.
Right. I don't know that I'm mentally prepared for anything. Yes. So I'm at that point in this. Me now. I mean, in the future, when I did it, I was totally mentally prepared for it. So
I was going to say, well, if we don't, either of us does not survive, this episode won't come out.
Because no, this will. This will be scheduled before we leave.
Oh, this will be scheduled?
This will be scheduled before we leave.
Oh, okay. So then there might not be one next week.
Yeah, we're down at Disney for Marathon Weekend. So pre-recording this, so no news, but we did have a few listener questions. So let's jump into a couple listener questions. And if anybody is interested in asking their own question for us to answer in the future, you can go to our website, enchantedears.com/podcast question. You can ask your question there. You can also just send us a message on Instagram. We're at Enchanted Ears Podcast over there. But our first question comes from Charles Q, who says, what is the best way to start collecting pins?
My suggestion is go into the Disney shops that sell pins, and they sell lanyards that come along with
like a starter kit.
5 or 6 pins, and they usually do them centered around a movie. So pick a movie that you like. I believe some of my first pins, I found one that was, I didn't get a lanyard from this, but I found a pin set that was The Lion King, because that's like my all-time favorite Disney movie, and those were some of my first pins. I still have them. I never have traded them. But yeah, like there's those ones, and then I think we've also just bought other pins that were like either random ones or ones that we knew like these are cheaper pins and we don't want to keep them, and then that's when those are ones that you're like, all right, I'm willing to part with this and I want to pin trade these.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, what's your goal? Like, do you want to trade pins or you just want to collect them? Because you're right, like if you go out and buy the pins, like, hey, this is my favorite movie, you're probably not going to want to trade those. And we've gotten to the point now where like we don't trade as much because we like all of the pins we have.
Yeah.
Which kind of makes it hard to trade. So like, maybe start out with a starter set of like a movie you like, and maybe get one of like one you don't care about, because then you can trade those. And you're right, you get 5 or 6 pins there. So.
And my other suggestion too, if this is like something that you're really like, you're in love with the idea, there's a couple ways that we've found to make use of them, because I feel like once you get pins that you like, it also gets to the point where you're like, but now what do I do with them? We still have some that are just sitting and not anywhere. So one thing is on Etsy, there are lots of people, and we still have to do this one. There are lots of people who make pin boards out of cork board, and you can get various shapes. You can get one shaped like the castle. You can get one shaped like just like Mickey Mouse's head. They have a whole bunch, Tinkerbell. So you can display them there and hang them on your wall. I have a it's the May as the panda, the red panda. I have a bag. It's not a Loungefly bag, but it looks like a Loungefly bag that has a window in the front of it, like a backpack. And I also, on my regular Osprey hiking backpack,
it's made for pins.
Yeah, that one specifically is made for pins, and it has like a pin display in it. But also on my Osprey hiking backpack, I've put pins on it.
We've seen people with like jean jackets, like put pins on them and stuff. So yeah, I think there's a lot of ways to display pins. If you are interested in trading them, definitely don't buy the individual pins, because that's like the most expensive way to get pins. Buy like the random packs or like the starter packs, because those tend to be cheaper, and then you don't mind trading them. But like just look for cast members that are walking around. They have like pins usually on their side, or sometimes they'll have like a lanyard, and just walk up and just say, "Hey, can I trade?"
And if you're
there's a lot of pin boards too.
Yeah, I was gonna say if you're staying at like Art of Animation,
any of the hotels.
Yeah, any of the hotels.
And then usually
sporadically they will put out a pin board, and you can go
just
up.
ask like at the gift shop at any of the hotels, like, when's your pin board come out?
Mm-hmm.
And all the parks usually in guest relations or some area have pin boards you can ask. So
and like the Disney Vacation Club places,
yes, those are good places.
They almost always have pins.
They get you in with the pin.
Yeah, but they're usually not. They're not pushy either. So don't feel like we have to avoid them because I don't want to talk about DVC. Like they're not pushy.
Yeah. So those are all some like easy ways to start.
Exactly.
Yeah, but just
great question.
Yeah, just buy like some starter packs, start trading. All right. So our next question comes from Sam G. What is your favorite Disney villain? I hope you answer the way I think you're going to answer.
Scar.
Okay, I figured.
Yeah, very, very easily Scar for me. But I think that I'm gonna deviate from that because I talk about Scar so much. So I'm going to give you my second favorite because I think that I've maybe only mentioned this once. I think my second favorite Disney villain is Hades because I think that Hades is really funny. I'm like very drawn to all of the Disney fire characters, every single one. It's so weird. And I don't know if it's because I think that they typically give all of the fire characters like an anger problem, and I feel like maybe I connect with that. It makes sense
because it's fire.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like I maybe connect with that because I think that there are times where like I almost deflect my sadness by kind of turning it to anger. So I relate maybe, but I love Hades. I think he's really funny and he has like a very sarcastic sense of humor like Scar. And so they
are very similar characters, and also that they have sidekicks that they kind of send off to do their bidding.
And they're very jealous of their nephews.
Well, and they're also, but they're also, what I was saying is they have sidekicks that they send off, and they're very ineffective at completing their missions to a certain extent. So, like, they kind of have grand plans, but they're not really great at executing those plans. So, it turned out worse for Scar, though. I mean, at the end of the day, Hades was like, whatever, I'm still Hades, and it's not that big a deal.
Yeah. He didn't lose his god status or anything. But he I think is really, I don't know. I think he's very interesting. What about you?
That's a good one. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I mean, the one that comes to mind, I mean, it's Marvel, but like Thanos. Like, I think I think they did a really, like, he's just so well developed, and like the backstory of him, and he kind of basically, his presence kind of looms across a decade of movies, which isn't something you see. I mean, typically villains, it's one movie, and you're kind of done. So I think I'm gonna say him. Like, I think I'm gonna say Thanos.
I think he's good too because there's something icky about him where it's like you don't want to advocate for his tactics. However, you can understand where he's coming from, which makes you feel almost like the villain yourself.
Yeah, and like he succeeds too.
And he does
like
succeed.
He's one of the few villains that like succeeds, actually defeats the heroes. It just made for a very interesting, and you're right, like a very like complex and layered story.
Yeah.
No, you're right. I mean, Hades is a good pick. Like, he's a fun villain. There are a lot of those. There's a lot of villains that's like, hey, I like this villain because they're fun. Like, they have a weird sense of humor. And again, like Hades, it's like he's a villain, but like kind of, but not really.
He's like a guy. He's like a villain that you're like, if I met him at a bar, so like I met him out, I would like kind of want to hang out with him because I wouldn't want to get too close because I feel like he might steal my wallet or I don't know.
In some respect, he's doing his job of overseeing the underworld. In some respects, like he's not really trying that hard to kind of do anything. So, that's interesting.
He just wants respect. I think I think that like Scar's almost in that same vein where it's like he just wants what he feels is due to him, which is sort of where Hades is. It's a little bit of like
Scar goes around like murdering people, so a little bit different. Again, like Hades I feel like he doesn't try that hard.
I mean, he did try to murder Hercules.
He tried to turn him human.
No, I believe wasn't. Oh no! The potion was supposed to turn him completely human, right?
Right, so that he could not rise against him. That was it.
Yeah,
that was it.
Are we certain?
I'm pretty
that
certain.
It wasn't supposed to kill him, but it didn't kill him because
it was supposed to turn him human.
Yeah, it's been a minute since I've seen
Hercules.
Hercules.
That's what I'm saying. Like I don't know, but yeah, I'm going with Thanos. I think I like the Marvel movies, just the impact he had. I think the story he had. I'm gonna go with him for my favorite villain.
You know what's kind of interesting too? Last thought on this. Hercules isn't even like in my top probably 10 Disney movies, but yet he is like my number 2.
There's great pieces.
Yeah,
about
there's great pieces. Hercules has a lot of great pieces, but I feel like as a full movie, there's something like a little missing. But
Lion King's probably not in my top 10 Disney movies, and I think Scar's up there for me as well.
I mean, there's part of me that wants to come across this table at you, and there's part of me that's like, but he did compliment Scar, so yeah. I'm gonna give you a pass right now, and you won't have to sleep on the couch tonight. Maybe.
Excellent. So, all right. Well, thanks for the questions again.
Yeah,
if you have a question you'd like us to answer, enchantedears.com/podcast question. Yep. All right. So let's get into it. Opening day at Animal Kingdom.
I was just setting the
mood.
Yeah.
A little bit like a mood music there.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right. So Animal Kingdom is the biggest theme park in the world. It is 580 acres, 230
hectares.
Yeah, hectares, which is almost as big as all of Universal Orlando, not including Epic Universe.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Universal Orlando is 278 hectares. Hectares. It's a weird word. Very weird word.
Yeah.
The safari itself is 110 acres. So like almost 20% of the park. That's about the size of Disneyland Park in terms of acres. So the scale and scope of the park is huge. As we all know, anybody that's been there, it is a massive park. But you have to think about this like before Disney had built this. I mean, Epcot was kind of like their next biggest park. That was, a very big park. I think it's 300 or roughly acres. But like this was a pretty big endeavor on their part to build something this grand. And it was basically it's a theme park, but it's a zoo as well. Like this is something unlike anything Disney had undertaken up until this point. Like if Walt Disney was alive and actually had built Epcot as an actual city, like that was something kind of completely different like than the theme park they built. Like that's probably the most equivalent thing to what they built here, where they're like, we're going to build a zoo, but we're going to build it as like, you're not even going to know or think of it as a zoo, like kind of the way they built it, especially with the safari, like the way all those animals are there, like they're still technically in some sort of enclosure. Like, even though I still to this day swear those lions could make that jump across those rocks, like it looks like they are so close that at any second they could just leap out and come into the savannah. But yet it is, it is a zoo. That is an enclosure that they are in. So just kind of what they did with this park was so ambitious. And I think that's one of the reasons why so many people love Animal Kingdom, because it is something so different, and it was fresh compared to theme parks that had been built up until this point.
Right. And I think that when it opened, especially, like, I think the enclosures were more generous than enclosures of that animals had probably up to that point. I think a lot of zoos have now, kind of raised the bar and even matched or exceeded what Disney did as far as like enclosure design that, gives them room to roam and not feel quite so stuffed in. It's definitely eons away from the time that they were in cages or like small, like we at our local zoo, they had a rocky small enclosure for bears, and for the longest time, and it was like eventually they phased those out because they were way too small and just generally terrible.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I have no stats on that. I mean, other, like you mentioned, like our local zoo, they've definitely improved their stuff over time to know like how much Disney's impacted that. But it's a good point of like Disney doing this, maybe directly or indirectly, but like they at least, to your point, probably showed other
like
zoos
push the medium forward.
Yeah, and showed that, hey, if you make this more immersive and more like their natural environment, yes, it's good for the animals, but guest satisfaction is better. You know what I mean? Like, to your point, yeah, if you went to the zoo and you're kind of like, that animal doesn't look like it's really enjoying itself here, it's kind of old, dated, like, you're not going to want to go back to that. But yeah, you go to Disney and it's like, this is amazing. This is like I'm on the savannah. And so it almost pushes everybody else to be more immersive and to kind of update what they're doing.
I think that, because there is a large contingent of people who say like animals shouldn't be in zoos, and I think that is true in an idealistic way, but considering that we are humans and a lot of times we unfortunately don't care about things that we don't see up front right in front of us, you do have to almost have these animal ambassadors, and then having them have these lives in these enclosures that are beautiful, but also Disney like does a good job of talking about like the different enrichments that they have, or like they make paper mache things, or they go around in like the tiger enclosures and
even
they
just
spray.
The vets, being able to see the operations
with
the
vets,
to see that, now you might get interested in veterinary medicine,
right? Exactly.
And it's something that, like, if I was a kid and saw that, I don't know that I don't think I would have become a vet, but like I would at least know that's
an
career
option
to do.
Yeah. It's really interesting how they have managed to do that and put this park together. It's a little off topic, but I do think that they did a really nice job of making it, like you said, it's a zoo, but it's feels like more than a zoo. It's a zoo with experiences that aren't just like, hey, I'm going to do a little talk about the animal for a little bit and throw it some food. We're going to put that educational piece a little bit more to the forefront.
Yeah, I mean, the whole focus was on conservation and nature, which is something that Walt himself
ties to Walt.
Yeah, with his nature documentaries, and Walt loved to travel, like the whole Disney nature, like he started that. So that was kind of their way of tying it back and kind of explaining, like, hey, this is why it's Disney, because this goes back to our founder, things he did of travel and conservation and nature and things like that. So kind of tying into that.
And like kind of going back to its nexus. So this is so interesting that kind of like Joe Rohde was the person.
I mean, this is where the legend of Joe Rohde, I think, began. He did this.
Yeah, that he brought a Bengal tiger.
Oh yeah, So they start planning. It was called at the time Wild Animal Kingdom, was kind of the initial name for it. But after Hollywood Studios opened, again, this is Michael Eisner's expansionist era of just build it and they will come. We need to build more. And so they started planning for the park after Hollywood Studios due to Euro Disney. And this is a whole, I think, other episode I'm going to work on of like, how would Disney have been different if Euro Disney was financially successful or they never built it? Because I feel like so often in the 90s, we're talking about stuff and we go, they had plans for this, but Euro Disney wasn't doing well, and they cut back on stuff. I mean, Hollywood Studios had that. They had plans to, we had talked of like the Great Movie Ride, to put that in, I think Paris was one of them stuff. And so this is another one where they planned shortly after Hollywood Studios, MGM Studios at the time began. Euro Disney was having problems. There was kind of some economic issues. And so it got delayed for 5 years. And there was also a worry that, was a zoo going to be exciting enough for people? And this is where Joe Rohde then brings in a Bengal tiger to a pitch meeting, because he's like, okay, Michael Eisner.
You don't think that animals are exciting? Here, experience this Bengal tiger and tell me this isn't exciting.
Right. And he was like, oh, okay, I get it now. Let's build this park. So construction began in 1996 here. It was announced in 1995 again as Wild Animal Kingdom. The budget was $600 to $800 million. Of course, they did not stay in budget.
Do these things ever stay in budget for Disney?
No. And, I kind of wonder, and we'll talk later about like the attractions that were there, because there really wasn't a lot at the opening. You kind of wonder too, like, who's doing these budgets? Is it Imagineers like lowballing it because they're like, hey, we really want to get this project going, so let's just say it's going to be like tops $800 million, knowing full well it's not going to be $800 million,
and they're not going to leave a park like 75% done, and they're like, well, guess we're kind of stuck now. We either sink all this money in here or we just finish it.
Right. So the final cost ended up being around $1 billion. That's around $2 billion in today's money, which is kind of like middle of the road for the parks at Walt Disney World. So in today's dollars, Hollywood Studios was about $1.3 billion. Animal Kingdom was $2 billion, which I think is interesting because those are the two parks that, when they opened, didn't have a ton of stuff in them. Epcot was $4 billion. That was their most expensive park. And then Magic Kingdom was $3.1 billion. So again, I feel like those were fuller parks when they opened. So, you're 50% to double the cost of these parks.
I don't know. I still don't. I don't understand how. I mean, I do. I think they made that whole lake in the middle of
and Spaceship
Epcot.
Earth and all of the countries that they built. I mean, there was a lot in Epcot when it first opened, all the different pavilions and everything. It definitely compared more to Hollywood Studios, where the whole park was a 2-hour backstage tour.
Yeah.
Like there definitely was more to do there. And again, just the size of the land they had to develop there. But what's interesting is, as we've talked through a lot of these, it seems like it always goes hand in hand with Universal. So this was around the same time that Universal announced Islands of Adventure. So they both got announced in 1995. Islands of Adventure opened in 1999, so a year after Animal Kingdom. I'm not sure which one was announced first, because this is like, again, going back to Hollywood Studios and Universal Studios. Like, they kind of are announcing these parks around the same time, because this is when they start trying to like one up each other in everything that they do.
This takes me back. It wasn't like one of our first episodes ever, like Animal Kingdom's 20th anniversary or something.
It was, yeah.
So yeah, it just makes me think of that. Getting a little nostalgia.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, that was one of our first episodes. But yeah, it's interesting. Of again, Universal's going to open another park. Disney's going to open another park. Like they just
they go back and forth.
They kind of battle. And then you have now they got Universal gets Harry Potter, Disney gets Star Wars and Avatar, and the Epic Universe, and we'll kind of see what happens there. But yeah, so this thing ended up going over budget. It ultimately opened on Earth Day in 1998, so it was April 22nd, 1998. They had a big 2-hour prime time special on ABC. They had all the main ABC people at the time. So Drew Carey was in it. You had Danielle Fishel and Will Friedle from Boy Meets World, Tia and Tamara Mowry. They had all the people that were on any ABC show. They kind of had in this special,
sister.
Yeah, to kind of promote this going forward. But you did mention, Joe Rohde, and again, this is kind of the legend of Joe Rohde. Now he had already done the Adventurers Club.
Yeah, I was gonna say this is after the Adventurers Club,
right? But that was his first thing, and that was small scale. I think this is really then where Joe Rohde becomes Joe Rohde. Now he is
So he was just he was the caterpillar stage there, and then
this is when he transforms into a butterfly. Yeah,
but a butterfly that has somehow still manages to fly with all of the millions of rings.
He only had one thing in his ear. This is when he got
Do you think that they make him stronger? Every single one of those little pieces that he adds to his ear, it's resistance. He's resistance training, and so every one he adds, he gets infinitely more powerful.
Maybe.
I think that this is how
it could be.
It works.
It could be. It's like a superhero thing.
Uh-huh.
It could be, but what he went through, and I think this is why he has become such a standout Imagineer, and I think why everything he works on turns out so well, is because he puts the Adventurers Club, he's a adventurer himself. I feel like he's actually in the a real life Adventurers Club. He is there is some it's not called the Adventurers Club, but I forget what it's called, but he's in it. He's posted about it on his social medias and stuff like that. But he lives this stuff. He travels and wants to make it as authentic as possible. And I think you can't fake that authenticity. And I think the fact that he goes and makes it authentic is why what he does it feels so different.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the artifacts and in different places around the park, that's all from Joe Rohde's travels, and he brought back a lot of that stuff. If you think about, I know that this isn't an opening day attraction, but Expedition Everest, a lot of that stuff is from Nepal, in that area where this ride is supposed to be taking place. So it feels so realistic, and it feels so what's the word, legitimate, because it is. It's just been taken and moved to Walt Disney World to give us this experience of traveling across the world.
Yeah, so when he was planning Animal Kingdom, he traveled to Africa and Asia for inspiration, to your point, got things from the local cultures, all that sort of stuff, brought it back. They also collected seeds from 37 different countries for the plants, so that way the plants they would have in the park would be authentic to all of these different countries around the world that they're representing. Like, it's that kind of like level of detail that's also probably why it went over budget, because he was just jet setting around the world. But like, it's that level of detail where I feel like, I mean, I don't want to say today they don't do that, because they're obviously not building like a new park. And a lot of the stuff you're building today, like Star Wars, you can't go to a different planet and bring stuff back. But
you can't fake that. Like, as a person who is not super detail oriented, it does not come naturally. But like, obviously he is detail oriented. He notices all of the little things. And so you have to be a specific type of person to be like that. And you can't be like, well, I got to be like Joe Rohde. I'm going to turn those senses on. Like, you just either are or you aren't.
That's a good point. But I think that's why, yeah, he's
just
so
a
special.
one of a kind kind of individual.
Right. And to your point, it like, he's naturally doing this. Like, I feel like in his everyday life, like, he's still, even though he's not an Imagineer,
he's inquisitive.
Yeah, he's still traveling, doing all this stuff.
He's like, he loves to like immerse himself in the different cultures and like be like a collector of stories and things like that. And I think that's it's just it's a cool way to be. I imagine if you could spend a day with him, you would be like, it would almost be worse than spending no days with him, because you'd be left wanting so many more.
They had some adventures by Disney with him in Africa to go on like safaris with Joe Rohde for like a week. That would have been incredible. Yeah, they did that. I think they've done that like once or twice.
Yeah. If it happens again, I don't care. I'm going to sell our house.
You think Adventures by Disney is expensive?
I'm going to sell our house.
Wait till you got to go with Joe. You're going to sell our house.
What is it? What are the things on Shark Tank that they'll be like, we did a HELOC. I don't know anything about any of these.
There's a lot of people on Shark Tank. Yeah, I sold my house for this. That's not an advisable business investment. So
please hire me. I went on an adventure with Joe Rohde.
Yeah. So the original idea was to have current animals, historical animals, so past animals, so that's where you get dinosaurs and things like that, extinct animals, and then mythical animals. And I think this is somewhat still known, like the whole idea that there was going to be a beastly kingdom. If you still look at the logo, there's still a dragon on the logo. Whether that logo gets updated once we get rid of dinosaurs, because now there's no dinosaurs. There's not going to be dinosaurs in the park.
I hope not.
And I think this is kind of where people, their main issue with bringing in Indiana Jones for dinosaurs is because the original park kind of, again, it was like a 3-pronged approach. Alive animals, extinct animals, mythical animals. Mythical animals never got built, again, due to Euro Disney. They basically said, hey, look, you can either get dinosaurs or mythical animals. You can't get both. Euro Disney's bleeding money over there. So again, this is where it goes. If we didn't have Euro Disney, we'd have mythical animals.
Do you think that they would have engineered real unicorns?
The idea was animatronic unicorns. Was there? I think it was going to be a boat ride. I think it was some of the concept art.
Wait, do you ride on swimming animatronic unicorns? Because I would be all over that.
I think.
Although I wouldn't want my legs in the water.
I think what one of the concepts was a boat ride through, and there was different mythical animals on it. Like, yeah, there's different mythical animals. But
that'd be awesome.
So they cut Beastly Kingdom and they kept dinosaur. But yeah, now that once dinosaur is gone, it just becomes current animals. It's still about conservation, still about all that. So like at the heart of the park, it's still the same. But again, the original idea of it was this kind of 3-tiered thing, and now you're down to 1 tier. And I think that's where a lot of people are like, why can't we still keep dinosaurs in here somewhere? Like, hey, you could add Encanto, but why can't we have still something with dinosaurs? Like, it takes away an original part of the park, I think is kind of what the biggest issue of it is. But so that was kind of the idea. And I think some people know about like Beastly Kingdom and that there was the idea of this like mythical creatures, but I guess that's why they got Pandora now. I mean, I guess you could argue.
Yeah, those are mythical creatures. They're not mythical. Real.
Yeah.
They're So
I think maybe you still have.
They're essentially dragons.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a dragon on the logo, so so you have that. So that was the original idea. We did not get the mythical kingdom though on it.
I think we should get Maleficent's dragon just to make up for it. Like,
yeah,
just plop her in
throw
somewhere.
well, we're getting Villain's Land, so we'll have that now.
But no Scar Ride, no Escape from Elephant Graveyard.
They announced
They
announced
disappointed.
all the villains for Villain's Land, and they didn't announce Scar. But one more thing I kind of want to mention before we get into the opening day attractions and what the park was like on opening day, the Tree of Life, which I think is one of the most iconic icons you have there. It's 145 feet tall.
It's an iconic icon.
Yeah. Like a park icon, like one of the most iconic park icons.
I just want to make fun of you.
But it's built on an old upside down oil platform.
Yeah, I don't know how this works. It's confusing to me, but yes.
Yeah, because it's basically it's so grand, and like to structurally support it, they had to use an old oil platform for it.
No idea what that looks like.
I think like those, like kind of like the you see out in the water, like it's kind of like the 4 legs, and there's like just a platform on it, kind of out in the water. But it's on something like that. A lot of steel, a lot of structural integrity there. But there's over 300 hand carved animal sculptures on it.
Yeah,
so
it's really cool.
Yeah, and it's amazing because it does look so realistic, and it's an old oil tanker platform, but it was made to look natural, and it does. I mean, it is phenomenally done. All of the individual leaves on it, the carvings of all the animals on it. It's amazing. Okay,
so just aside from the fact that I can't visualize the oil platform, what a beautiful sentiment that is. That they have at the heart of the park, literally at the heart of the park, they have reused something that generally is associated with things that are bad for the environment, and like the drilling for oil, and they've taken that and just made it into this beautiful work of art.
Yeah, the message of conservation and protecting the environment, things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, never thought of that on it, but yeah, interesting message of that they took something and
that was not by accident. Like
not with Joe Rohde.
Oh. No, 100%. I mean, I think that you don't have to be Joe Rohde to pick up on that one, but yes.
Yeah. So the park, like we mentioned, did open on Earth Day, April 22nd, 1998. Now, before the park opened, there were protests. So like PETA was protesting the park, and some other animal rights groups, and they were protesting because on Discovery Island, now not the Discovery Island in Animal Kingdom, that's the old kind of like where the water park that's abandoned now. I guess they had animals on there, and they had a few animal deaths there, and I guess there was some concern that those animals weren't treated very well,
and so they're saying if Disney can't do it well, they don't deserve to have a zoo.
Correct. Yes. So why are they building this park? We have a lot of concerns around it. So there were some protests around that. I couldn't find any that there was any like on opening day specifically, and I don't know of any like going forward, because it does seem like they are doing a very good job. Like we mentioned, it seems like they're kind of at the top of the game just for like animal care and things like that. Yeah. But did want to mention that there were kind of protests around this of like, we don't, we're worried about the safety of animals. How are you going to have animals in a theme park? And Disney's done a lot where they don't have fireworks shows. They don't keep the park open super late. Like they are worried about, the well-being of the animals. Which I think is a positive, because it could have completely gone the other way, where they're like, we're just here to make money, and if animals bring people in, but the second they don't bring people in, who cares what happens to them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's always important. Again, kind of going back to the reason why I'm a supporter of zoos versus like, even though I love animals and like a lot of people aren't, I think that you have to do it somewhat on their terms. And like when you go to a zoo where like, for example, they have a dark house and it's dark during the day and you can't see the animals very well, but you're like, this is the way that they would live. And so you can see them as well as you can see them. Now, this isn't what, like, Disney doesn't have one of these, but I think that that's super important to try to keep it as close to their natural environment as you can, understanding that you're not going to give them all the space they would normally have.
I also think the other thing is the caretakers that work at Animal Kingdom are very good at what they do.
Yeah.
And they care very much for the animals. So it's not like Disney hired people that aren't good, with animal handling. Like I think that helps, that you have a really good devoted team. The magic of Disney's Animal Kingdom, that behind the scenes where they show like everything they do, these people are dedicated and devoted to these animals, which I think helps because they're there to make sure they are protected and well treated. So they're going to push back on probably things Disney would want to do or the parks would want to do, because they're there looking out for the animals' well-being.
Yeah, and I think like any person who goes to be a zookeeper generally has it at heart, because they have hard jobs. They never get days off and stuff like that. Like it's hard. I mean, it's not they never get days off, but they don't have a similar like schedule to a lot of people. But yeah, like they can pick from like the best of the best, and those people I think really view those animals as family members and take care of them so very well that and they watch over them and they notice their habits and they take notes of when they're off even the littlest bit. So yeah, it's interesting if you watch that documentary.
So when the park did open, there was very little in it to do.
I feel like that's a theme.
Yeah. So you had the Oasis, Dino Land, Africa, Camp Mini Mickey, which I feel like is the first time Minnie's ever gotten top billing for anything. It was Camp Mini Mickey.
I'm surprised.
And that's it. Asia, that didn't open until 1999. So it got me thinking, because you mentioned this is a theme that like there's very little to do. So it got me thinking of, is it cheaper to build all the stuff up front, and then if it doesn't work, kind of redo it or that sort of thing, or just put bare minimum in the park and add to it later? Because it does seem like, I mean, it's very expensive. They spent a lot of money on this, obviously, but like they had to expand after the fact because, again, there's not a lot to do there. They built Everest. Now we have Pandora. Like, would it have just been cheaper to just build more to start with? Like, just build Everest to begin. Like, I don't know. Like, it's just, I'm curious on that of like, what's the approach and the thought there? Is the thought like, hey, let's get like a minimum product out and start to get guest feedback, because again, you don't want to spend too much on a ride that you think is going to be a slam dunk and then nobody like wants to ride it, or like it's an interesting thing, because it seems like the motto is just get something out there, and then we know we're gonna have to put more money into it, but at least we can get guest feedback on seeing what works, what doesn't work.
I think that economically speaking, like how businesses work, where it's like you do your minimum kind of product and then you see the success of that product and then you take that money. Now Disney isn't really doing that. I mean, they have theme parks as a whole that can make up for.
Yeah, I'm sure too. It's somewhat of just like, hey, build it and they'll come. And I think a lot of the money goes into these parks too, of like just the infrastructure of it. So there's so much in just getting everything ready that it's like, hey, we'll just do that. But
I would love to just know like the cost that plumbing is, or laying pipes or just something like that, where you're probably like, it's just astronomical just for something that's
hundreds
like
of millions.
To like just infrastructural that you never see or think about.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like there's just so much cost into there that it's so expensive just to get stuff to the ground to be able to build, that it's hard to build after that. But so in these lands, there was basically 4 attractions. That's it. Like on opening day, 4 attractions.
Plus the animals. But
plus the animals, but true attractions. And one of the attractions was the Discovery Riverboats, which was essentially just a way to get from one end of the park to the other. They made it an attraction.
So is this the canal? Like, were they in that canal?
Yeah. So
they have
have the flotillas.
The flotillas,
going through? Yeah. So what you could do is you could take a boat through that would take you from one end of the park to the other. How they made it an attraction is that they had a cast member on there with a live animal teaching you about an animal, about like the animal on it. So it was kind of educational. And what's interesting is
until one of the cast members dropped the animal in the water.
No. They were small. They were small. Like I think they had they were like in like plastic containers and stuff. Like it's kind of like your like show and tell thing.
That sounds dangerous.
Yeah, no, it wasn't dangerous. But what's interesting is
or maybe it makes it exciting. Like they have, a very poisonous snake on the boat, and then you hope it doesn't bite somebody. That would be a thrill ride.
That would be a thrill ride. I don't think that's what they did though. But what's interesting is from a CNN article I found, they interviewed Michael Eisner, and he mentioned that it's expensive, and that you're adding an extra person on the boat, and there are a lot of boats, but it's worth it. So this was the idea of having a cast member on there. And in this, they mentioned a meet and greet, so you could see animals like leeches and tarantulas. So that's kind of
leeches, yes.
But that's kind of the thing.
Yes, love that.
That's kind of the thing they're going with. So not poisonous snakes or anything like that. But
no, I'd much rather have a poisonous snake than a leech.
But what's interesting is they talk about, hey, yes, we know it's expensive to add a person, and I was like, oh, this is great. Like, it's so different than like today, where they're like, hey, we know it's expensive to add a person, but it's needed. But that didn't last long. They got rid of the cast member pretty quick on there because people just saw it as a means of transportation. And so it kind of came to the point of like, well, why are we paying a cast member to go on there? It's not an attraction. Like, they tried to like be like, we need an attraction here, so let's person on there. But what was cool is kind of like if you're on like at Magic Kingdom, like on the riverboat there, where they have some like scenes and some like animatronics for you to see, like kind of when you get around the rivers of America that you can't see from being in the park. They had this too. So they had a pretty cool dinosaur animatronic that was in the water. It kind of looks like the dinosaur from like out front of Dinosaur. Like, it kind of looks like that one now. But it was an animatronic that moved around in the water. So when you're on the riverboat, you could see that. So there was like some reason to do it, but like not much. Like, this was a pretty loose attraction, if you want to call it quote unquote attraction there. You also had It's Tough to Be a Bug. So that is the show in the Tree of Life
that is going away,
which is going away. You also had a Countdown to Extinction, which was the original name before they changed it to Dinosaur because they wanted to tie into the movie. Basically the exact same ride, though. I couldn't really find anything that said, here's what's different. I think there are some minor differences there, maybe a dinosaur here or there, but like the Iguanodon was always the main dinosaur in it that you're trying to capture. So it wasn't like they changed that around. So that was basically the same attraction. It was just called Countdown to Extinction, which is going away. So far we're 0 for 3 on opening day attractions. The fourth attraction, which is still there,
never going away.
Yeah, it's not going to go away, is Kilimanjaro Safaris.
Yeah.
But it was a drastically different storyline on opening day.
Yeah, it's really interesting. There was a poacher storyline to it. So there were 2 elephants, Big Red and Little Red, and we're trying to help catch the poachers, but you end up doing this at gunpoint. You catch the poachers, and then at the end, Big Red is dead at the end of it. So there's a like a
dead
sad
elephant.
Yeah, it's a sad ending.
Yeah, and so it's like, again, it's this whole thing of like conservation, I think, trying to make people aware of poachers. But yeah, it's an interesting, I can see why they changed the storyline and got rid of that, because it's kind of a sad ending.
It's very
especially for
dark.
kids.
Yeah, and I do feel like coming from the era, like this is kind of peak our childhood. That was a big thing when we were kind of growing up, and a lot of conservation shows would talk about and raise awareness of poachers and how...
I mean, that was like peak Steve Irwin and Jeff Corwin, right?
Don't get me started. I mean, I just got chills.
But what I'm saying is, like, they were huge. They were like major celebrities.
Yeah.
In terms of just like pop culture and media, and so there was a lot of attention on... Yeah, like conservation,
especially,
animal protection.
And Jeff Corwin was, I believe, Disney. Going Wild with Jeff Corwin, I believe, was a Disney show.
Oh, really? Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
Maybe ABC or something like that.
Yeah, now he's on PBS. Like, he's still around doing stuff, but he's not doing it with the same like levity that he used to do it with. But yeah, it's really like getting back to Kilimanjaro Safari. It's a really dark story that, I mean, it's kind of one of those debates of it's dark and it makes you feel bad, but is it not a tale worth telling?
Yeah, it's impactful.
Yeah, very impactful.
But ultimately that, as we know now, that storyline is kind of gone. What was so amazing about Kilimanjaro Safari is the design of it, and it was designed to entice animals to be in certain spots on the savannah, based on the placement of like food in the trees, and just just the enclosure, so the animals that aren't even on the savannas, like we talked about, like the
The
lions
African
and
wild
different
dogs,
things.
yeah.
Well, I don't think the African wild dogs are new.
Yeah, but
But
I can't remember what was there before.
yeah, I mean they've had different animals throughout there, but just
I feel like that used to be hyenas, I think. I feel like that was hyenas.
They did. Well, when they did the nighttime safari, they had hyenas there, so it changed. But like the lions, for instance, like the way they placed the enclosures and everything, it made it so that the animals, like, you could see them. And again, out on the savannah, like that they would be in certain spots for that. So just like the planning and scale of that, because when you're dealing with wild animals, if you don't plan it properly, you could have had that attraction where you go and you don't see any animals,
right?
Because they're not out, they're not where they need to be, and then you'd have a major failure in terms of an attraction. Like you said, that's basically 20% of the entire park. You're taking up space, and if it didn't work, you're going to reuse that land for something else. So the way they built that was really well done. So those were the 4 main attractions. There were a few shows and some other things to do. So you had the Festival of the Lion King there. That was actually in the Camp Mini Mickey area. So it was not in the building. The building it is in now is a new show building. But it was there. So that is still around. You also had a show called Colors of the Wind, Friends of the Forest from Grandmother Willow's Grove. I believe
so that's from Pocahontas.
Yeah, I believe that was the official full title of it. But that was
it's a mouthful.
Yeah, that was a Pocahontas show with live animals. So it was kind of like what they do with the bird show, the Feathered Friends in Flight. But they had other small animals.
Oh, that's
come
really
out.
cool.
And they also had like an animatronic tree. So they had the grandmother, but they also had like a small, like little, like, he was more like a stick, like a twig, like just growing tree.
So
there
little
talking.
Groot.
Yeah, kind of.
Except for he doesn't just say "I am Groot."
Yeah, so he talks. So you had some animatronics in there. Pocahontas sang some of the songs from Pocahontas. So that was kind of the show there, where it was like IP driven, but some animals in there as well. You did have the Flights of Wonder, is what it was called. So you did have a bird show in there as well. You also, where Nemo and Friends is now, you had Journey into Jungle Book, which that was the original show. I believe Tarzan show took over for a little bit. Now we have Nemo and Friends. What's interesting about this one is the Shere Khan puppet that they used looked really cool. The live action people that were there, like Baloo and things, they looked a little bit kind of sketchy, but the Shere Khan puppet was pretty cool. And they had this like trampoline thing in front, so as they were like moving through the jungle to like have motion, they could kind of like jump run on this trampoline. That
sort of,
gave, like,
don't
an
they do that
thing of motion?
Don't they sort of do something like that in the Festival of the Lion King as well? They use trampolines at that
Well,
one portion.
they use like full trampolines. That's like an acrobatic thing. This is more of like they're kind of like running in place, but it gives like more motion to it. It was like just a cool effect that they had. But it kind of feels like the Broadway Lion King and some of just like the puppetry with the animals and things, but again, like the actual costumes not up to like a Broadway caliber on there. But that was a pretty cool show that they had as well. You had the Boneyard with Dino Land. This is before you have kind of the current Dino Land where it's Chester and Hester there. So before that, it was called Dinosaur Jubilee, which, again, this is just where they ran out of money at the parks, because it was just a giant tent. They had just a big white tent, and they had like dinosaur fossils. It was basically like going to a museum, but it wasn't even like a permanent building. Like they just threw a tent up and kind of made this sort of like dinosaur museum. And that stuck around until 2001, until they made it Chester and Hester's Dino-Rama there.
They also had the Gorilla Falls Trail, which was the only one that they had. So you guys, if you think about that now, how they have a bunch of like primates along there, that's the only one they had. Asia didn't open until later. And they also had Conservation Station, which I think is one of the most underrated sections of the park.
Yeah, and that's kind of changed a lot over time. I'm not sure
exactly how.
Yeah, how much was there opening day. I mean, now they have the vet procedures. You can see they they put the drawing experience because they got rid of the animation academy, but they've kind of put it in there because really that building has nothing else to do. They had like meet and greets in there for some time where you could meet like Rafiki and Timon and stuff. So they kind of use that space for like something at some point to get people back there. But the real reason to go back there is like the petting zoo to
And
see
the
any of
the operations.
the operations,
100%.
stuff like that. And then, yeah, you mentioned like, again, animals. Like we think of Animal Kingdom, it's all about the animals, but the Gorilla Falls Trail was the only one because with Asia not opening until 1999, that's I think where like the Bengal tigers are and things like that. You didn't get that trail until after opening
And
day.
I don't even know anymore if they're Bengal tigers. They might be other types of,
I'm not
of
sure.
tigers
I'm not
now.
sure. Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure on that one either.
Tigers.
Yeah,
You have
we'll just say
tigers
we'll just say
there. You have
tigers.
there.
Yeah.
But yeah, but so opening day there were, because the Discovery River boats, I don't even want to call that an attraction. We'll call 3.5 attractions there.
I feel like there's Sumatran tigers. I could be completely wrong. Anyway.
Okay. So you had 3.5 attractions there, and then 3 shows. So it was kind of equal shows to attractions there. And then, yeah, I love that they just had a giant white party tent. And they're like, let's just throw some.
Like there was a wedding. It was just
Yeah,
left over.
exactly. Yeah, like somebody, like some exec had a wedding and they bought a tent for it. And they're like, what am I going to do with this tent now? And they're like, hey, let's just put it in Animal Kingdom and we'll put some fossils in there and we'll make it like a little dinosaur museum. So yeah, it's interesting of yeah, when you open these parks, that there's not a ton to do there. Like we look at it today, and that's why I've always, I've talked about Epic Universe of like, how much is there really going to be to do? Because they have all these lands, but there's like one attraction in each land. And so, I think in 10 years when they build out on it, you're going to look back on it. Yeah, there's a ton to do there. But when you look back on the opening day of these things, it's like, there's 4 or 5 attractions. It's like, well, how did anybody spend the whole day there? But it's almost part of it's just like the novelty of it. Just being there of like, you're going to walk through so slow because of the detail. You're going to want to be like, can I find all 300 animals on the Tree of Life? Like I want to spend a lot of time walking these trails, just exploring the space. And the way it was designed where the way it was designed where the pathways just kind of don't lead to anywhere. Like you can get lost in Animal Kingdom very easily. Like the way it was designed, it is just made to kind of wander through it. And I think for that, is like, that probably kept it going for a couple years because it was just so new to people. And now that you kind of know where everything is, you need more attractions, you need more things to kind of fill up your time because you're going through it so quickly because you've seen some of that stuff. But initially, I mean, there had to be just so much to experience.
Yeah, because the park map wasn't invented until like, what, 2015?
I think last week.
I was going to
No,
say,
but you know what
I'm pretty sure
saying.
that people could just be like, oh, what's here?
But my point is like the details, like the details like in the park that you're going to want to look at. You can kind of just explore and get lost in that. But once you've done that a few times and you're more familiar with it, you're not going to stop and smell the roses as much when it's not brand new.
What I will say is, because Animal Kingdom is so vastly different from all the rest of the parks because of all the foliage, because of just like the general vibes there, that it is kind of beautiful because you are in a park that feels like you're in a jungle at points. And so for the majority of people that, a lot of people that they're blowing their vacation budget for probably several years to go there, and they're not traveling and flying somewhere where exotic, like this feels so,
it does.
So immersive and exotic that you are, you're transported not to Orlando, Florida, but to, like we were saying, Africa, or you are in the jungle somewhere. Like those, or things
you're on
that
Pandora.
Yeah, well, not then. Or you're somewhere where Steve Irwin, to like kind of go back to what we were saying, Steve Irwin or Jeff Corwin was exploring on their shows.
Right. And you can learn something. It's that edutainment thing that Epcot does well Animal Kingdom does well.
It makes you feel good too. Like you're not just you're spending your day having fun, but you're spending your day. Everyone loves to be able to sort of spew facts at other people because then you look smart.
Oh yeah, you can learn something and then like come back home and be like, actually.
And then for the school forums, you know, you could say we are going to Animal Kingdom to learn about conservation and
There you go. It works on so many levels. But
many levels.
But it's interesting to look back, as it is on all of these parks, to look back on Animal Kingdom in
their infancy.
What it was like opening day, just kind of what went into building it, the Legend of Joe Rohde, and again, somewhat how little it was, and again, how much it cost, $1 billion, and you get 4 attractions, which kind of feels like that's a pretty expensive park, but it's continued to grow. It is one of our favorite parks, maybe your favorite park.
It goes back and forth.
It goes back and forth, but it's well loved, and I think Disney did a really good job with this.
The thing about Animal Kingdom that is nice is it doesn't almost ever, I feel like, feel crowded there. I feel like it feels like a respite versus some of the other parks where you feel maybe boxed in.
It's so big and it's so spread out.
It's very different.
It's all those roads where you can just get lost and kind of.
Yeah, that's why Joe Rohde made it. There's like a lot of roads in it.
Okay, but it's a great park, and it was great to kind of look back on what it was like on opening day. But that wraps up the show for this week. I want to thank everybody again for listening. If you've not done so, please leave us a rating or a review. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. It really helps, and we really appreciate it.
Thanks for lending us your ears.
Have a great week, everybody, and we'll see you here next Monday.
Bye-bye.